This is the first of a powerful three-part series revealing the most urgent and undeniable signs of the end times. These are not myths, and they're no longer distant possibilities. What we are witnessing now on the news, across the nations and in Jerusalem, is exactly what the prophets described. From the borders of Israel to the corridors of power in Russia, Iran and China, military tensions are escalating. But these aren't just global conflicts. They are pieces in a prophetic puzzle first revealed in the book of Daniel and echoed in Ezekiel, Revelation and 2 Thessalonians. The drums of war are beating louder, and with every clash and provocation, we move closer to a moment foretold long ago, the great shaking that precedes the return of the King. Jesus warned us in Matthew 24:6. You will hear of wars and rumors of war, but the end is not yet. These warnings were never meant to paralyze us with fear, but to prepare us with faith. What if these wars we're watching are more than battles over land and power? What if they are signs from heaven? Like and comment eyes open if you believe we are seeing prophecy fulfilled in real time. Stay with us, because what's coming next may shake your soul. The war that could ignite the end may already be underway. Across Israel's northern border, a prophetic storm brews. Hezbollah rockets light the sky. Iranian operatives move through Syria. The border with Lebanon, once a buffer zone, now resembles a war front. This isn't just a regional dispute, it's the rekindling of ancient hostilities foretold in Scripture. Ezekiel 38 and 39 speak of a northern coalition, led by Gog of Magog, coming against the land of unwalled villages, modern-day Israel. Though scholars debate the identity of Gog, many agree on one thing: the threat comes from the north. In recent months, Israeli officials have confirmed that Hezbollah, backed by Iran, has embedded tens of thousands of rockets across southern Lebanon. But what most news anchors won't tell you is that these aren't just military maneuvers. They align eerily with the structure of Ezekiel's war alliance. Iran is the key power propping up this northern axis. Its reach extends into Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and even Gaza. And while the West debates policy and sanctions, Iranian leaders openly declare their intent to wipe Israel off the map. Zechariah 12:2 warns, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about." That trembling has begun. Israel is surrounded by regimes and militias that see no place for her existence. Every provocation risks ignition. Every border skirmish flirts with all-out war. But here's what makes this moment different. Israel isn't waiting to be struck. In recent years, preemptive strikes have targeted Iranian infrastructure in Syria. Covert operations have foiled weapon transfers to Hezbollah. The war posture has changed, and it's a matter of when, not if. Military experts report that one spark could launch a multi-front war, north from Lebanon, east from Syria, and south from Gaza. The IDF now trains under the assumption that a full-scale war with Hezbollah and Iran is inevitable. The northern threat is not theoretical. It's alive, armed, and counting the days. And yet, as the world watches distracted, another storm brews even farther east. Iran has made no secret of its desire to become a regional superpower, and central to its vision is the destruction of Israel. This is not speculation. It's enshrined in the rhetoric of Iranian leadership and reinforced by decades of proxy warfare. The regime doesn't just threaten Israel from afar, it surrounds her through alliances, militias, and missile stockpiles placed in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Hezbollah in Lebanon has become Iran's most powerful arm. With an estimated 150,000 rockets aimed at Israel, its arsenal is larger than most national militaries. And those weapons are not just leftovers, they are precision-guided, and many are hidden among civilian infrastructure. The goal is simple: paralyze Israel's cities in a single massive strike. To the east, Iran's presence in Syria grows bolder. Bases, training grounds, and weapons factories have been established within striking distance of Israel's Golan Heights. Iran's intent is not only to reinforce its allies, but to create a direct line of attack on Israeli soil. In response, Israel has drawn a red line. The Israeli Defense Forces have launched hundreds of airstrikes on Iranian targets in Syria, a campaign known as the War Between the Wars. These strikes are strategic, but they're also a signal. Israel will not tolerate encirclement, and yet despite Israel's efforts, the encirclement tightens. Zechariah 14:2 says, "I will gather all nations to Jerusalem for battle." While this speaks of a climactic moment still to come, the groundwork is being laid now, through these alliances, weapons transfers, and military entrenchments. What's more, International actors are shifting. Russia, once a distant player, now coordinates with Iran and Syria on military operations. China has signed strategic pacts with Tehran, and Western influence in the region is waning. This shift in balance emboldens Iran. The regime's ideology is apocalyptic. Leaders believe chaos must be stirred to hasten the arrival of the Mahdi, their messianic figure. In this worldview, war with Israel is not a catastrophe. It is a divine mission. And in the middle of this web, Lebanon teeters on collapse. Its economy is in ruins, its government paralyzed, and Hezbollah's grip is nearly total. This makes the nation not just a threat, but a powder keg. Israel knows that a coordinated attack from multiple fronts could stretch its defenses to the brink, and so the red line remains. But the margin for error grows thinner every day. But Iran isn't the only ancient power stirring again. Another giant waits in the wings, preparing for its moment on the world stage. To understand the gravity of current global alignments, we must look east, toward Russia. Long viewed as a geopolitical heavyweight, Russia has increasingly taken on a prophetic role that aligns with the vision cast by the prophet Ezekiel over 2,500 years ago. In Ezekiel 38:2-3, God instructs the prophet to set his face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Many Bible scholars believe that Gog represents a future leader of a northern power, commonly associated with modern-day Russia. Magog is linked to the ancient peoples of the Russian steppes. What makes this even more striking is Russia's growing partnership with Iran and Turkey, nations also identified in the Gog and Magog alliance. This trio, once politically disjointed, now conducts joint military drills, shares intelligence and collaborates in Syria, Israel's northern doorstep. Russia's presence in Syria is no longer limited to advisors. It has become deeply entrenched with air bases, missile systems and thousands of troops. Though Vladimir Putin often presents this presence as a stabilizing force, the strategic positioning cannot be ignored. Russian military aircraft routinely operate near Israeli airspace. One miscalculation could trigger a war that pulls multiple nations into conflict. This is not just political maneuvering. It is a reawakening of ancient alignments that Ezekiel foretold would come against Israel in the latter days. What adds more tension is Russia's aggressive stance in Europe and its invasion of Ukraine. This action has isolated Moscow from the West, but drawn it closer to powers like China and Iran. Economically and militarily, Russia is shifting eastward, aligning more clearly with the very nations prophesied to oppose Israel. And here's the deeper spiritual layer. Ezekiel 38:4 says, "I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth." This implies that Russia's involvement in the coming conflict may be drawn by divine orchestration, perhaps even against its own plans. Today, Russia controls access to much of Syria's airspace. It has influence over Iran's operations, and it shares intelligence with Turkey. All three nations have a history of hostility toward Israel, and now they are cooperating under a common cause. It's no longer speculation. The pieces are moving. But just as this northern colossus takes shape, a second prophetic alignment is stirring, this time from the east. History has always placed Israel at the epicenter of global tension. But in recent months, something has shifted. The tension is no longer smoldering. It's crackling like a live wire. As of June 2025, Israel faces threats on all sides. Hezbollah in the north, Hamas remnants in Gaza, and Iranian proxies entrenched in Syria. But more than the rockets and rhetoric, it's the spiritual significance of this land that has caught the world's eye. The international community seems obsessed with dividing Jerusalem, weakening Israeli sovereignty and establishing a new Middle East order. And behind it all, the words of the prophets are echoing louder than ever. Zechariah 12:3 warns, "On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations." Today we are watching that prophecy inch closer to fulfillment. In just the past few weeks, Jerusalem has seen record numbers of Jewish worshippers ascend the Temple Mount, despite tensions. There's a growing call for full Jewish access to the site, something that could ignite outrage across the Islamic world. But here's the twist. Some within the Israeli religious community are claiming that preparations for the Third Temple are not only underway, they're nearly complete. The Institute for Temple Studies has quietly trained priests, restored sacred vessels, and even bred the red heifer required for purification. These aren't rumours, these are documented efforts unfolding in the open for those with eyes to see. If the Temple Mount is reclaimed, if sacrifices resume, if Islamic groups respond violently, the fuse will be lit. Bible believers know this isn't about real estate, it's about revelation. Daniel 9:27 speaks of a covenant being confirmed with many, followed by the cessation of sacrifice halfway through, a pivotal moment that sets the stage for the Antichrist's rise. And this stage, it's being set in Jerusalem. World leaders posture, but it's God's timeline they're dancing on as wars rage and alliances shift. The enemy of our souls wants nothing more than to destroy what God has chosen, but prophecy does not lie. It has a rhythm, and Israel once again is the drumbeat. Could the next move in Jerusalem tip the entire world into a spiral of war and judgment? We're not just watching news, we're witnessing prophecy with our own eyes. And what comes next might shake everything we thought we knew. As tensions in the Middle East grow hotter by the day, a single prophetic thread weaves through it all: the reconstruction of the Third Temple. To most of the world, the idea sounds like a religious fantasy, but to those who understand biblical prophecy, it's the fuse that could ignite the end times. The book of Daniel speaks of a future moment when sacrifices will once again be offered in a temple in Jerusalem, only to be desecrated by the man of sin. Daniel 9:27 declares, "In the middle of the week he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation." For nearly 2,000 years that prophecy seemed impossible. The Second Temple was destroyed in 70 AD. Israel didn't even exist as a modern nation until 1948. And yet, here we are. In 2025, this prophecy has begun to look less symbolic and more literal. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has already recreated the sacred temple vessels. Priestly garments have been prepared. The red heifers, long considered necessary for ritual purification, have arrived in Israel from Texas. And perhaps most stunning of all, a newly organized Sanhedrin has been actively petitioning the Israeli government for Temple Mount access. For Jews awaiting the Messiah, this construction is sacred. But for Christians who believe in Jesus, it points to something else entirely: the rise of the Antichrist. 2 Thessalonians 2:4 reveals how this dark figure will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. This aligns perfectly with Daniel's vision. If the Third Temple is rebuilt, and all signs suggest it might be soon, the world will be one major step closer to that terrifying fulfillment. But it's not just prophecy scholars who are watching. Major news outlets have started to report the tension on the Temple Mount. Islamic leaders warn that any Jewish attempt to reclaim or build on the sacred space would trigger global jihad. Political analysts warn of a spark that could ignite a global religious war. And here's the unsettling truth. This prophetic powder keg sits in the hands of a few leaders in Jerusalem, Tehran, and Washington. Will the Third Temple be rebuilt in our lifetime? Has the construction already begun in secret? Could the altar of God once again rise above the Temple Mount? And what dark force will dare to desecrate it? That's the question stirring beneath the surface of today's headlines. And it brings us to a prophecy so specific, so haunting, that even skeptics are starting to take notice. As if Eastern Europe weren't enough, the Pacific has turned into a pressure cooker. Tensions between China and Taiwan have escalated beyond diplomatic deadlock into live fire drills, military incursions, and stark warnings. The Taiwan Strait, a narrow ribbon of water, is now a flashpoint for global war. But here's the prophetic layer most people miss. Daniel 11 and Revelation 16 describe movements from the east and the kings of the east gathering for war. In Revelation 16:12 it says, "The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east." For centuries this was a mystery, but now the geopolitics of Asia are aligning with these cryptic verses. China's sweeping military expansion, its alliance with Russia, and growing tensions with the United States may be more than geopolitics. They may be prophecy unfolding. What's more, Revelation 9:16 speaks of an army of 200 million. For decades, some scholars speculated that such a number could only be possible with China's population base. Today, that prophecy feels far less allegorical and much more literal. And it's not just China. North Korea continues to launch missiles with increasing range and sophistication. Japan is rearming. Australia is deepening its defense ties with the US under the AUKUS Pact. The Pacific is bristling with preparations for war. Could we be watching the mobilization of the kings of the East? But it doesn't stop there. Jesus warned in Matthew 24:7 that nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. The wars we're witnessing now aren't isolated. They're converging. From the South China Sea to Ukraine, from Gaza to Lebanon, conflict zones are no longer regional. They're global chess moves. And behind it all, the book of Daniel whispers through time. This is how the end begins. Are we seeing the assembly of forces for the greatest war in history? One thing is clear. We're not just watching history unfold, we're watching prophecy ignite. And in the shadow of this gathering storm, something even more ominous is beginning to stir. Across the globe, war drums are no longer just metaphorical, they are literal. From Gaza to Kiev, from the South China Sea to Lebanon, nations are positioning their pieces on a board that resembles Revelation's vision more than a traditional battlefield. And beneath the surface of military maneuvering lies a spiritual dimension many ignore. Principalities at war over the fate of mankind. Daniel 7:23-25 speaks of a fourth beast that will devour the whole earth and trample it down. What if that beast isn't just a kingdom, but a system? A convergence of total surveillance, global militarism, and collapsing morality that emerges under the banner of peace, only to tighten its grip on humanity. The political rhetoric is growing hotter. Nations that once walked carefully are now boldly accusing one another. Just weeks ago, Iran threatened to burn Tel Aviv if Israel launched a full assault on Hezbollah. China responded to US naval movements with warnings of catastrophic consequences. And North Korea, long a wild card, is now testing hypersonic missiles again, with Russia cheering them on from the sidelines. Behind the news, one constant thread, the cries of the innocent. Civilians in Ukraine shivering in bomb shelters, families in Gaza mourning under rubble, Christian minorities in Nigeria slaughtered by the hundreds, while the world looks the other way. In Matthew 24:6-8, Jesus warns that wars and rumors of wars are just the beginning of birth pains. And yet for all this chaos, there is still a calculated silence from some world leaders. Why? Because chaos benefits those who seek control. Disorder brings opportunity. In the vacuum of peace, global powers pitch solutions that come with surveillance, control and compliance. Prophecy watchers are connecting the dots. The Euphrates drying up, Jerusalem on edge, alliances forming that eerily reflect Ezekiel 38. It's as if we're standing on the threshold of a prophesied convergence, where ancient texts are no longer speculative but predictive. And in the face of all this, the world seems distracted, entertained, divided. But for those with spiritual eyes, the countdown has already begun. But what happens when the world finally reaches the tipping point? What rises from the ashes of global war? The answer lies in chapter 9, Countdown to Prophecy. The fuse has been lit. While political pundits argue and diplomats negotiate, a prophetic countdown ticks silently in the background, one foretold thousands of years ago in Scripture. The tensions we see escalating across the Middle East are not just geopolitical, they're spiritual. And the Bible has already mapped out where this road leads. In Ezekiel 38 and 39, the prophet speaks of a time when a confederation of nations, led by a figure called Gog, from the land of Magog, will rise against Israel. Many scholars believe this prophecy refers to a future coalition that looks disturbingly similar to current alliances involving Russia, Iran, and other regional powers. If that's even close to being accurate, then we're no longer just reading prophecy, we're watching it come alive. Revelation 16:12 speaks of the Euphrates River drying up to prepare the way for the kings of the East, a chilling echo to what we've witnessed in recent years. Drought and climate change have exposed ancient ruins, but some believe it has also unveiled ancient warnings. Are we listening? These aren't isolated events, they are converging signs, from wars and rumors of wars, Matthew 24:6, to lawlessness abounding, to a global push for a centralized digital currency. Everything is aligning with the blueprint Jesus described on the Mount of Olives, and this is just the beginning. If this truly is the start of the end, then what comes next is even more unsettling. A charismatic world leader rising from the ashes of global chaos, offering peace and unity at a cost. Could the Antichrist be preparing to step into the global spotlight? This series began with a simple question. Could the current war ignite the end? But now we must ask, what are we doing about it? If the Bible is not only history, but a roadmap for what's coming, are we prepared for what lies ahead? This is not a time for fear, it's a time for clarity, a time for urgency, a time for unwavering faith. Like, comment, eyes open, and subscribe for more truth rooted in prophecy. Every video brings you closer to understanding the times we live in and the role you were born to play. This is just part 1 of our 3-part prophecy series. Stay tuned. The second video, The Kings of the East are Rising, is one that you don't want to miss.